Did your parents ever fight? Like my parents, there was like two levels to the fighting. Deuces. Level one, words. Screaming match. Back and forth for hours. Level one was kind of like, eh, here we go again. That's what it felt like to me anyway. When I was about 8 or 9 when this incident happened, I just felt like it was truly something trivial, like turning on a TV show. Dink, oh, we're watching a show now. It never actually felt like something that should stop or there should be any control over or it was wrong. It just seemed like this is the way that marriage functioned. This is the way that people functioned. And then there was a level two. When you hit level two is where words turn into actions. Level two is where you are in what I would classify as a knockdown, drag out brawl. Now, level twos happened often, but nowhere near as often as level ones. I mean, level two is maybe once, twice a week, maybe. I remember my parents had escalated from a level one to a level two. And there's plates that are smashing, and there's tables that are broken, and they're breaking chairs, and stuff's flying all over the place. They're all in the kitchen fighting at the kitchen table, and I'm over here in the living room, back far enough away, about 8 feet away, 10 feet away, to make sure that no flying objects were going to hit me. That's the only thing I had to worry about when I was witnessing the spectacle of a level two. A lot of the times to me, it just felt like Saturday morning wrestling. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. It was kind of crazy. I do know this though. My mother had like superhuman strength. When things went to a level two, it's on like Donkey Kong. Okay. Well, this particular time, if there was a level three to exist, this is one of the, I believe this is the only time I can remember in my life between my mother and father. Actually, it's wrong. That isn't true. There's another story I'm going to tell that escalated to a level three. So there is a couple of them out there in my history. Level three, I'm going to classify because I'm like classifying this now as I'm telling this story. Level three would be imminent death or danger. Okay, and there are some level threes. There wasn't many of them, but there are some level threes in my past. And this one turned from a level one to a level two, and we're setting the stage for what a level three looks like. My dad has my mom on the ground in a headlock, and she's not escaping. My dad's got her. My mother did not like losing. Maybe that's where I get it from. I hate to lose. And I'll tell you, man, when she got angry, she developed this like superhuman strength. It was wild. And this time, though, she couldn't escape. So I'm sitting here witnessing this thing with me, my brother Andrew, and my little sister Hannah. And I'm watching this thing go down. And my mother starts screaming, Andrew, get the gun, get the gun, get the gun. Now, logically, if I was an adult and not 8 years old, one would think if somebody's screaming for somebody else to get a firearm and to bring that over to an area, this might be unwise. This may be not an optimal solution to this situation. Well, my dad didn't say, hey, we should stop this. No more fighting. Let's put this thing down. What are we doing? There was none of that. And so my brother Andrew returned with if I remember it correctly, it was a 12 grade shotgun with buckshot in it. And as you can imagine, you got a young child, 8, 9, 10 years old. A 12 gauge shotgun is pretty long. And so he's just wobbling this thing all over the place. And my mother starts screaming, "Shoot him, shoot him, shoot him." While my dad is on the ground screaming, "Andrew, put the gun down, Andrew, put the gun down, Andrew, put the gun down." And I just had this moment in time where I realized that death was about to be on the opposite side of my experience. Like now it wasn't that me or my brothers and sisters were going to die. There was potential for my parents to die. That's the first time I can remember that happening in my life. First time. And Andrew stood there wobbling this shotgun for what felt like an eternity. In reality, it was probably 20, 30 seconds. But finally, he put the gun down. And my parents got up very quickly. My dad picked up the gun and took it back to the bedroom. And that was the end of it. We never had another conversation about this. We didn't talk at all about it. Nobody said a word. You see, in my family, we had a very dangerous gift known as sweeping things under the rug. I don't know if you had any of this stuff going on in your family, but in my family, that's what we did. We didn't solve problems. We cultivated them. We had rugs that were so high in the sky, they were practically mountains. Because no one in my family knew how to actually deal with conflict, knew how to deal with frustration, knew how to deal with practically any emotional reality whatsoever at all, including me at the time. I don't really remember feeling much about this. I just literally was like, "Oh, we're watching WWE right now." That's honestly where my head's at. It's where what I go back to is I'm witnessing some WWE, and I didn't have any fear for my parents dying. I didn't have any response whatsoever. I'm like, "Oh, I guess this is it." And I think that cavalier, like casual attitude about it really exemplifies how prominent these types of situations were in my life. It's what you would call normal. Normal. And I think that there are much less severe situations that happen in families. And personally, I think that unfortunately, when parents don't know how to resolve conflict, don't know how to talk through anger, don't know how to be honest, don't know how to be able to share without reprisal, don't know how to encourage and foster people growing up in a way that enables them to not have to have their anger be a weapon and their anger actually can become a tool. I think that right there in and of itself is the biggest problem in families, period, bar none, is that we don't know how to process our anger. We use it as a weapon to destroy instead of a tool to develop intimacy. And this is most families. This is what we do. I certainly had to spend a lot of time in my life understanding new ways to deal with these types of situations. And I'm proud to say that even though many times in my life I was a rageaholic, because I believe anger is put into people. Anger was put into me by my parents. Rage was put into me by my parents. Malice was put into my soul by my parents. And all of those emotions are, in my opinion, what leads one to make decisions that can alter a person's very existence. You see, when you have that trauma put into you over and over and over and over again as a person, eventually on a long enough timeline, you become so numb to it that it's non existent. And that is the most dangerous point you can be at as a human being, because you don't know what your response is going to be. In the past, there's been things like seeing red. That's what people have called it, seeing red, and not remembering what they did. I believe that this is a byproduct of unprocessed malice, rage, and hatred. In my life, I've learned how to process all of those things. And I have the privilege to say that I have thoroughly cleaned my soul from that. It is something that took me many, many years to do. Because as you can imagine, to me, what I just described was an average Wednesday. Oh, here we go again. Now, you may not have had an extreme situation like that happen in your life. Totally get that. However, the principles remain the same. If you want to be able to connect to your family in a way that's healthy and uplifting, the first step is to give people the permission to be human. Give people the permission to be able to be their authentic selves. Teach your family that anger is a misunderstood gift, because it really is. Anger is the boundary system that says, this is where I begin, this is where you end, this is me. Do not infringe on me. We just, as a society, as you could tell, I mean, there's stuff that happens all the time where people's very lives are taken from them. And it is tremendously sad. It gives me tremendous sadness whenever that happens, because especially in innocuous situations where it's like, really, over that? But I understand how that can happen because I've been there. I've lived that. I know what it's like to have repressed rage that made me have a murderous desire to take life from someone. I understand that extremely well. And I'm proud to say that after many, many years of my life, I've been able to release that and let that go. And now my anger has become a tool instead of a weapon. I truly believe that that is the most important lesson a person that's gone through trauma can learn in their life, is that simply because of what you've gone through, because of your anger, because of your rage, that does not justify your behaviors. And one of the things I had to understand is that this wasn't my fault, what I experienced and what I was trained in excellently, to be a rageaholic person filled with malice and hatred and anger. That's not my fault. That situation was beyond my control. But let me tell you something. I understood, even when I was in my teen years, as I would have these rage fits and malice fits and be flipping out and doing all this madness, which is what I was trained in, madness, that was my responsibility. And the consequences of my actions, whatever those consequences were, I was going to have to be responsible for them. That is the crux of the situation I see in families and in society. That is maybe crux isn't the right word. Maybe the right word is, that is the destruction of society. The lack of responsibility for oneself. I've been through it. And if I'm reaching somebody out there that's a real one that understands where I come from, that's been through it, I just want you to know something. It's tremendously important for you to have your anger. And don't let anyone else tell you any different. Because your anger is valid. And it's important to learn how to process that anger. I know that for me, what that looked like was taking a baseball bat and going to a burn barrel and smashing the bat into oblivion, right? For me, what that looked like was writing all the phrases and the words that my parents would say over me, or coaches or people would say about me, onto eggs and going into the woods and chucking those and screaming at the top of my lungs. For me, it meant doing extreme physical activity while at the same time processing that anger. And I'm going to go much more in depth with this idea on this channel, but I want to leave you with something. This is the first time I'm going to give you an opportunity to learn a tool that has changed me from a malice-filled, vengeful, angry person to who I am today. And this tool goes like this. If you can be honest with yourself, that's step one. Everything in life, when it comes to enlightenment and growing and change, comes down to one thing. Can I be honest with myself? And if you can, the next time you feel that anger coming up in your gut and something's about to come out of your mouth, that's at least what happens for me. I feel it. I can feel it down in my guts. I feel this anger begin to rise. The next time that happens for you, here's what I want you to consider attempting. I want you to ask yourself the following questions. What am I hurt by? What am I afraid of? What am I hurt by? What am I afraid of? If you can do that honestly, I'm going to explain to you what took me about 10 years to learn. It took me about 10 years to learn this principle. If you can answer those questions honestly, it will dissipate your anger from a weapon and it will turn it into a tool. What am I hurt by? What am I afraid of? Now, let's say I was angry in that scenario about my parents flipping out and doing all this stuff. How I could have dissipated my anger is, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid my brother is going to shoot my parents and kill them. What if I would have grabbed the gun and it went off? You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that could have happened there. And I think it's really, really important to gain mastery in those situations when your anger is taking over and going to have you make decisions you'll never be proud of and make huge regret in your life, to ask those types of questions. What am I hurt by? What am I afraid of? That is the fuel of anger right there. And those questions have saved me relationships. Those questions right there have been the bedrock of the character that I've built. Because let me tell you, when you're pissed on all the time, because you're angry all the time, people don't like being around you because they don't know what's going to happen. I've lost many relationships in my life because of that. And I didn't want to be that person anymore. I didn't want to carry that around. I don't know if I'm talking to you, but if I am, I would just encourage you to create safety through honesty with yourself. And this isn't something you got to tell somebody else. But if you're getting heated, if you can truly answer those questions, I can promise you, you will begin to see change in your relationship with anger. And your anger will go from being a weapon to a tool.